everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show, brought to you by Over the Bar. Checking in this evening for yet another match week review. Our first since the last international break. Match week 11 has been another fantastic weekend of Bundesliga action. Really treated to some great games, goals everywhere, plenty of talking points. And we're happy to get stuck into it all. Joined tonight by Mark. On the other side of the pond, how are things, young man?
Yeah, not bad at all. It's been a good weekend, hasn't it? Been loving the Bundesliga, the goals back flowing, which is exactly how I like it. So yeah, obviously the fact that Nuremberg had a gutting defeat on Friday night didn't exactly help my mood, but the Saturday games definitely helped pick me up again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Naturally, I mean, so obviously for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see that we're going to try and do something a bit different tonight and do some visuals for you and kind of show the team lineups. Obviously, if you're listening via the podcast, you won't be able to see this, but we'll be talking you all the way through it, so you'll be able to listen up nicely as well. Obviously, before we do get started, all the usual little bits and bobs of admin. So obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, if you can leave a like, a thumbs up, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Comment along. I see Justin saying hello this evening, but unfortunately we'll miss most of the show because he's recording as well. But I hope that goes well. Justin, make sure you subscribe and of course turn on notifications. Also make sure that you subscribe via audio platform as well. Leave a rating, leave a review. That'd be absolutely grand. And of course, make sure you give our brilliant partners a follow as well, being Bundesliga Boxes and of course Bully News. Right, so yeah, I mean, tonight we're not really doing our traditional show in a sense. Like obviously, there are going to be games that we concentrate more on, but it's not going to be like a traditional featured for show. Me and Mark just kind of thought, you know what, there's a load of good games that have been this weekend, and we'll just kind of chronologically work our way through. And yeah, in the time, try and talk about most of the games that have been and gone this weekend. But as you can see on screen, again, if you're watching with us on YouTube, we're going to start off with the game in Sinsheim between Hoffenheim and RB Leipzig. This was obviously an excellent game, very back and forth, a headline maker for sure. First game in for new Hoffenheim head coach Christian Ilse. Starts as good as you can do, really, with a famous win, trailing 3 times in the match, which was a fairly bonkers affair. I'll try and work our way through the first half in terms of the score, and then Mark, I'll pass the buck so you can kind of talk us through the second half, which was definitely the most drama filled. But yeah, Leipzig went into one of their first leads in the first half through that man, as per usual, it seems, Willi Orban. He's such a threat. Obviously in both boxes, it seems. And yeah, got on the end of a lovely cross from Nusa. Sliding in to make it 1-0. However, then the goal scorer was rather sumptuously put on his arse, is what a lot of people say around these parts, by Hlozek, who obviously had a fantastic game, showing great composure in the box, to then put his chance away for 1-1. Hoffenheim, of course, the home fans couldn't celebrate that for too long because down the other end the ball goes for Nusa to have his say once more. Lovely curling effort, one of the goals of the weekend for sure. Leaving Ollie Baumann with no chance, making it 2-1. Hoffenheim still had a great deal of the ball in the first half and were looking pretty good, but couldn't make it count ultimately. And went into the second half. Mark, getting the names mixed up already. And the home sides, well, got off onto the front foot straight away again through a very young, impressive player who we're starting to see a lot more of, and we might see a whole lot more of in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it was the young German who managed to get them back level as well at 2-2, wasn't it? From a really nice strike from the free kick, smash off the post. Looked as though it might come back out, but it just about went in the right side of the goal. It was a lovely equaliser. And, the young man, as you say, expected to be an international before too long. As normal in German football, they tend to take a bit longer to give players like the senior caps, and they let them have a little bit more time in the youth and things like that. And that seems to be what they're doing with Bischoff as well. But definitely one of the stars of the season so far, despite the kind of ails of Hoffenheim so far this season, well, before this weekend. But another man who was just excellent in the game, obviously, Hlozek, which we'll talk about later. But he was definitely a player that looked improved under Ilzer, the impressive Ilzer, who obviously comes to Hoffenheim on the back of really impressive pedigree, having won the league with Sturm Graz in Austria as well, ending that never-ending kind of monopoly of the league. RB Salzburg had won the league, I think, for like 13 years or something before Ilzer and his boys managed to stop them in the tracks last season, which was great to see for Austrian football as well. But as for this game, obviously it was a man who hasn't always endeared himself too much to the Hoffenheim fans, Stanley Nsoki. To be fair, it wasn't the worst own goal you're ever going to see because it was an amazing ball in. And I think Openda was going to have a tap in, basically. But unfortunately, Nsoki actually looked initially as though Openda had got the finish in this one. But it was the unfortunate and rather beleaguered French centre-half Nsoki who tapped in for what looked as though it could have been the winner, because we're already quite late on in the game. Obviously, as you can see on the screen, 67th minute, that goal went in. And then you're thinking, Leipzig might just go and win it quite comfortably now, maybe get another goal. But it wasn't to be, and it was the man of the match for me, Adam Hlozek, who is a man who's always had so much praise, so much kind of pundit expectation, but for me has never really delivered it until this game, really. And I never really rated him for Leverkusen, which might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, because he wasn't altogether bad for Leverkusen. But this game, I thought he was superb, and he finished really well for the second time, giving the Leipzig defence the run around before finding space to fire low into the far corner for the 3-3. So you're just thinking, great point for Hoffenheim, 3 times behind. Ilzer will be really happy with the point against a strong team on debut. But it got even better for the Sinsheimer, didn't it? And it was obviously that man, kind of the not very often used in years, basically, Brun Larsen, who ended up heading home the winner from another nice cross from deep. Really, I mean, I'm not sure what the Leipzig defense was doing there because it seemed to be in acres of space, but it was a great run and thumping header, which obviously sent the arena into basically raptures. A good crowd as well, by the way, at Hoffenheim for this game. So I think the fans are really quite excited about what Ilzer could potentially do at the club. I mean, obviously there was a lot of pessimism when Pellegrino Matarazzo was fired, but I think he could be a really good appointment, to be honest. I was surprised they managed to get him because this is a man who's been managing the Champions League. Obviously, he was at Dortmund just a few weeks ago as well when his team were quite unlucky to lose against in that game. And, this is a man who's really building a bit of a dynasty there at Sturm Graz. And now he's at Hoffenheim. But Rory, I mean, it was a crazy game, wasn't it? But, I mean, we've got to give a lot of credit to Hoffenheim. They played well. Going forward, they've got a lot of quality. And we really saw some good performances out there, didn't we, in particular in attack?
Yeah, in attack, absolutely. And, I can't kind of half agree with you and half don't in respect to Hlozek. I agree in the sense that it just didn't work out for him at Leverkusen, unfortunately. And you're kind of like, he went to Leverkusen with, like you said, a lot of hype, and it just didn't work out. So the move to Hoffenheim, you're thinking, oh, is he just going to kind of disappear into the wilderness and you never really hear him, and he might pop up every so often with the odd goal. But I think, credit where credit's due, including this match. I think so far this season he's been really, really impressive. and genuinely stood out in a Hoffenheim side that have not stood out, apart from a few individuals. So obviously the fact that they unlocked or able to unlock his talent in this match was super important. He does show a good deal of composure in the box. From what I've seen, before, he knows where the back of the net is. He's obviously probably a confidence player, still quite young. So yeah, plenty of work for him to do yet, but that's obviously a great start. Yeah, from what we can tell, from the basics, Ilza changed the formation to go to a back four. And so things maybe looked a little bit better defensively, but again, that's kind of hard to really dig too much into after one game and the fact that they still conceded 3 goals. So I think I'm yet to be won over from a defensive point of view. Like you say, Solki and Chavez as a centre-back partnership duo. Yeah, that makes me have nightmares at night thinking of those two going forwards. So improvements to make. But it just did feel a bit more solidified for Hoffenheim in that sense. The midfield pairing, however, is something they could really get on board with Anton Stack and Tom Bischoff. That really kind of has promise as a midfield partnership. Stack was also really good in the game. He got the assist for the last goal. I think he was the one who plays the cross in for, as you mentioned, Mark, Brun Larsen, who's a player who's actually been linked to Hoffenheim and Frankfurt, I think, for this January transfer window. Obviously, Seb Hoeneß knows him well from previously working with the club. So obviously he pops up to be the match winner, but we might actually see Brun Larsen move on in the winter and transfer window. So might be one to keep an eye on overall for that. And yeah, they just show great character to keep on coming back. Like you say, Leipzig, by hook or by crook, got themselves ahead 3 times. Really, their only impressive player on the day is Nusa. I don't know if you picked out anyone else, Mark, but Openda and Šeško, as you can see on screen, both got hooked. Šeško on the hour mark. Baumgartner didn't really happen for him. And defensively, they really looked quite poor and quite open at times. So yeah, Leipzig now, what are they, winless in 3, I think it is.
And 4 in all comps, I think.
Well, it would be. 8 points now adrift to Bayern. So yeah, you mentioned it on Thursday when we were doing predictions. There's actually a bit of chat now about Marco Rose and his role. So there's going to be even more, presumably, after that result.
Yeah, it's looking worrying for the local hero, the Leipzig born and bred man. But yeah, I just feel as though, to be honest, he's maybe always been a little bit overrated in truth. Obviously, he had that great period with Gladbach when he got them into the Champions League, unexpectedly that year. I think that was the year before we started covering this show. That would have been 1920. And then the year we started covering it, they were in the Champions League, and he got them through the group, didn't he? Which was obviously really impressive. A difficult group, I seem to remember they were in as well.
Yeah.
But then obviously he went to Dortmund and pretty much failed there. And he's had mixed success at Leipzig, but sometimes I just struggle to see a real identity from Marco Rose's teams a lot of the time. Top managers are supposed to have an identity. You'll know, Rory, from the talks with Amorim, they all keep saying he has a clear strategy, a clear identity as a manager. And that's what, for me, I'm not sure whether Marco Rosa really has, to be honest. His misuse of Šeško this year has been quite concerning as well, because this was a man who was linked with £60 million moves to Man United in the summer. And I just feel as though he's not even come close to what we saw for most of last season. He's been played a little bit as an attacking midfielder recently, and it's just not working at all. Things are getting a bit worrying for him at the minute, aren't they, Rory? Because
I liked the fact that Šeško stayed at Leipzig this season, because and he said it quite early on in the transfer window. He said, "No, I want to stay at Leipzig. I want to keep on developing as a player." So with that in mind, you don't you wouldn't think it's a mental thing with Šeško, like, oh, I wish I'd moved because I almost moved to whoever. Because I think he made it quite clear early enough in the window that he was staying put. So it shouldn't be that, or at least I hope it's not that. So yeah, like you say, maybe because he's operating a little bit deeper, he's struggling rather than playing on the shoulder. So yeah, there's still work to do. Also, again, if you kind of matching up Leipzig and Hoffenheim player for player, that midfield axis of Kevin Campbell and Vermeeren don't really, do it for me too much either. So,
I think they're missing Haidara, aren't they? They're really missing Haidara. They need to get him back because he started the season really well, but since Vermeeren's come in, I think he's too young. Obviously, he came in for a big fee as well. Another player that came in for a big fee, but as is often the case, it takes him a little bit of time to really kind of get into the team, and obviously they've changed the back. They've gone to a back four as well nowadays again, whereas obviously last season they were operating as a back 3/5. But obviously the loss of Simakan initially didn't seem as though it was such a big worry, but we're starting to see issues there defensively now the last month or so. So, obviously it was always such a strong defensive unit when it was that back three of Orban, Lukeba and Simakan. But now Klosterman always looks like a weakness, to be honest, fullback. So they're missing a few players through injury, but as you say, Rory, it doesn't look that strong a team at the minute. And there's a lot of off-form players, and they've got to get them back on form, basically.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're going to be out of a title race within the next month before Christmas, to be honest.
Yeah, certainly so. And a young team as well, so they're going to have to learn quickly. That's certain. Good stuff. So I think, like we say, great credit to Hoffenheim. A fantastically entertaining game on Saturday to get us started tonight. Right, so I think we'll move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about Leverkusen, obviously the champions. Obviously, we're playing on Saturday afternoon as well. It was part of a very dramatic and entertaining Saturday of Bundesliga action, just as Mark very kindly is getting the team lineups for this one on screen as well. Again, from a podcast point of view, you guys will try and talk you through it all, but I'm sure you're all in the know anyhow. But yeah, from a game point of view, obviously it finishes 5-2 to Leverkusen, Mark. A highly entertaining and impressive comeback by Leverkusen, very much led by Paddy Schick, obviously filling in for Boniface, kind of filling in his shoes due to injury. But my, social media and everyone was probably quite rightly losing their shit, excuse my language. But when Heidenheim not only went 1-0 up in Leverkusen in the Bayer Arena, but they went 2-0 up via Matthias Honsack, jumping through tackles and skipping through tackles very easily after Dortch was able to get on the end of a cross where Hincapié had lost the ball whilst Leverkusen were trying to play out from the back relentlessly so, and Alonso would only have it one way. But yeah, I mean, I was messaging you, but we talked about this a little bit later on the day, but it was crazy, and we were kind of thinking like Leverkusen are falling apart here, but it does massively highlight their defensive issues this season. We'll come on to the 5 goals and their comeback, but that start was seriously off and worrying.
Yeah, it was really, and it's been a kind of theme that the defense hasn't been functioning this season, and nobody really knows why, because it's the same defense for long periods of last season as well. Obviously, they lost Kosunu, didn't they? But he was kind of a bit part player the second half of the season, and I think Jabi tended to prefer to go with Hincapié, which is what it is now, alongside Tapsoba and Tar. Let's not forget that Grimaldo was also quite guilty in that first goal as well, selling a pretty poor pass back to Hincapié, in truth. A man who, for me, hasn't really hit the heights of last season, Grimaldo. I mean, both attacking and defensively, I would say. I mean, last season, he was probably not far off winning player of the season, in truth. In the whole league, he was that good. I mean, what was it? 12 goals, 12 assists, and God knows how many clean sheets as well, and just all around brilliant performances. But this season, we've not seen the best of him yet. There's still time. Let's not be too hard on him because he's a player that has given us a lot of joy the last 18 months or so. But yeah, in general, defensively, it was poor. But I'm going to be honest with you, I was following this game, and I always thought Leverkusen were going to come back, to be honest. I don't know why, but I was thinking that they are going to come back in this one because I was just so confident, really, in this one. And I think, actually, Frank Schmidt blamed, actually, the injury to Marvin Pieringer as a reason why they fell apart, which it makes a lot of sense, in truth, because, he is the target man, and he might not get that many goals, but he's a menace, basically, for defenders. And he was putting himself about a lot in the first half an hour of that game. Obviously, the second goal was a really good goal, actually, from Honzak. As you say, poor defense, but from a Heidenheim perspective, it was a really nice goal. But then, as has happened pretty much most of the last 2 months, really, for Heidenheim, they did kind of fall apart. And initially, it was Frimpong who hit the inside of the post and was unlucky not to get a goal. And then a rather scrappy goal, really, from Palacios, wasn't it? Maybe Kevin Muller could have done a little bit better on that one because it was his near post. But that was obviously the one that sparked the comeback. And probably the player of the match, really, Paddy Schick. Like, that was a great striker's performance. And I thought 3 really good finishes. He restored parity very, very soon after the consolation. And then, obviously, they did manage to get in at 2-2, but they pretty much fell apart in the second half, didn't they, Rory? And 2 good finishes from Paddy Schick. I enjoyed the fourth goal, the hat-trick one, where he just kind of drifted in and nodded in. He's such a good striker, really, Paddy Schick. I still feel as though if he gets a run of games, he could still be a 20-plus a season man. But Boniface probably has more to his game, so you can understand why Jabi prefers to go for him. But I mean, you're not going to get many better backup strikers than Schick, to be honest, for any team in Europe, really, in truth. And then obviously Granit Xhaka with another nice finish for the 5th, which finished it off. But I mean, as you say, it was good character we've not seen recently as well from Leverkusen. They've been, taking leads in games and giving them like leads away. But in this particular game, obviously they gifted Heidenheim a 2-0 lead before coming on to win quite comfortably. But I mean, let's start with Leverkusen. I mean, are they title contenders? Because let's be honest, they've only lost 1 game in 11. And basically, if you add it onto last season, that's now 1 in 45 in the Bundesliga, which is just incredible numbers. And the game they did lose was the game they gave a 2-0 lead away as well. So they'll be kicking themselves for that one. But at the same time, it doesn't quite have the same feel as last season, does it? There's still individual good performances. The likes of Wirtz, Schick were great in this game. But Rory, it does seem a bit more... They put in 60 good minutes and 30 bad this season, don't they, really?
Well, yeah, you've very much hit the nail on the head because, so up to the substitution of injury of Marvin Pieringer on 28 minutes, as you can see on screen, it was a Leverkusen performance then that you can say, well, it was 60 minutes of good stuff, and that they came back into it and actually started to play. 60 minutes, 5 goals. That's a great record, and the way that they came back into it is fantastic. The individuals that they possess, just quality everywhere. What I suppose one thing for me is this, like you say, the individual levels of some of them has unfortunately dropped off. And I think you mentioned Grimaldo, not seeing as much from him. We're seeing Frimpong. I was trying to give him some praise a few weeks ago before the international break where I thought he was starting to look better. But as you can see again on screen, he was pulled off on the half. Nathan Teller, playing a bit, playing the second half. Frimpong's not being used as regular. I know Alonso was a fan of chopping and changing last season anyway, but he definitely was, using Frimpong as his go-to, but that feels less likely now. The midfield is an interesting one because obviously we've got Alex Garcia, who we're not sure on. I'm using the royal we because I think you're the same as me, mainly. Palacios and Xhaka I really, really like. Obviously, no Andrick in this one. There's been an injury to Terrier as well, and I think he's done for the year. So, yeah, pressure on Leverkusen in terms of they are being stretched a little bit. Obviously, they didn't have a great result in the Champions League last time out. There's obviously the one thing that they weren't suffering from last year is all the chat about Alonso's future, and it's no doubt impacting on the players, I think, as well. It is only we're almost in December, but the season is still young. We're a third of the way through, 11 games in. There's so much football to be played. There's still so much up for grabs. Like, it's so frustrating that Alonso and Leverkusen are having to field this, and I get it because he's one of the most sought after managers out there, and it's very likely that he'll move on in the summer. But just let them crack on and enjoy it, and try and have another go at retaining the league and whatever else. So if you're asking the question, are Leverkusen in a title race? I think they absolutely are. Like you say, they've lost one match in 45 in the league across 1 and a bit seasons. So there's no doubt that they can go on a run. Can this 60-minute performance kickstart their season? That's the ultimate question. They're going to have to obviously play in Europe and then back it up again next week when they're playing. So they need to go on a good run and then break for Christmas and just see where they're at, really. But Heidenheim, Mark, on the other hand, they are taking, a rather quick free-falling act all the way through down the division. Now find themselves in 15th place. Seventh loss of the season, winless in the last 6 in the league, that is, and now just have the small matter of the next 3 fixtures being Frankfurt, Bayern, and Stuttgart. So, we predicted it. We said it at the start of the season. We thought, I think we went 16th, or did we put them as 16th or 15th? Either way round, we had them down there.
I think 16th in the end. I think we took the gamble and said they were going to finish in the bottom 3, I think, yeah. And
who's to say that they're not going to? At the moment, they're really struggling. And if Peering's injury, I must admit, I don't know the details of it, is serious, then, they're all of a sudden looking quite vulnerable, and especially so defensively.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah, at the minute it's it almost, as I say, the comeback almost had an air of inevitability about it, as far as I'm concerned. I just feel as though it's a funny season that Heidenheim are kind of putting together, really, in many ways, because they're doing so well in Europe. I mean, performances in Europe. I mean, for the first ever campaign in Europe, they won 3 out of 3, and including a win, away at Hearts, away in Cyprus. It's not easy places to go because, these will have had strong atmosphere, strong crowds, and basically they've gone there and won the game. So I think the biggest issue has been too much rotation, which has to happen. Basically, that's part of the issue. I mean, when you've got a squad as small as that, really, it's very tough to do this level of rotation. And Paul Vanner, who's obviously like their star player, I think he's lost his form a little bit as well. That's part of the problem. I mean, it was a shock to see him on the bench for this game, in truth, and then he came on and basically messed everything up. So, yeah, it's not that good when you star play, a man who's still being linked with big moves this summer, by the way, to some the likes of Leverkusen, Stuttgart, Dortmund even, and yet he's still not really. Obviously he had a great start to the season, didn't he? But the last few weeks, he's kind of, as often happens with young players like that, he has had a bit of a dip, and they need to get him back on form. And the same with the likes of Cienza, Conte as well. These guys were doing well early season, but I mean, in truth, this was a kind of weak squad that they went with for this game. I mean, the likes of Honzak, Dorsch, Beck, they don't normally start for this team. And the fact they went 2-0 up with effectively a kind of reserve squad out there was really something impressive. But basically, they lost easy in the end. As you said, Rory, they've got a hard run coming up, and they've got to stop conceding goals. They've got to start scoring more as well. And I think a lot of it's going to come down to, first of all, this Pieringer injury. Because, I mean, if anyone doubted him, I mean, this match kind of proves that he is important to them, basically. They've got to get Vanna and Cienza back on form, Conte and the like, and they've got to start scoring more goals as well, because things aren't going that well for them at the minute. Obviously, they've got this amazing game, probably the biggest game in their history against Chelsea in the Europa Conference League this Thursday. And just go out and enjoy that. You know what I mean? They've earned what they've done the last 15 years, really. This is like a culmination to play one of the European giants in Chelsea in your home ground. I mean, it's going to be an amazing occurrence for them, that. But just enjoy that, and then it doesn't really matter if they win or lose that game, in truth. But they've got to come back and get some points in the league. Even though they play Frankfurt next Sunday, they've got to, even if it's just a point, they've got to start gritting away and picking up points. Otherwise, they're going to end up in that bottom 2-3, and it's going to be a long season for them.
Indeed, massive good luck to Heidenheim for that game. I hope you absolutely batter Chelsea. I fancy them as well, especially in Heidenheim. But alas, we move on. We look forward to that game on Thursday. But let's move the show forward a little bit, because obviously we've been chatting half an hour now, and we're only through 2 games. So let us move the narrative over to Dortmund. And what was I think it was an expected result. However, certainly played out in what was a bit of a strange game in the end, especially played out by Freiburg. Especially when you look to the starting 11s, which again, Mark has popped on screen for those of you who are watching with us on YouTube. And straight away, when I saw the starting 11, Mark, I was like, I tell you what, Freiburg have got a terrible record against Dortmund, but I genuinely fancied them after seeing that starting 11. I don't know about you, but if we just talk about that to start with and then on to the game, it didn't look that strong to me. I know Gittins had come back, and he's been one of the better players for Dortmund, but the team minus Guirassy and no Chan, and for me, it just looked a little bit open. What do you reckon? Would you disagree, or did you fancy Dortmund from the off anyway?
I would say I still fancied them with this lineup, to be honest, because I actually think they look better without Chan a lot of the time. I'm not like his biggest fan. He's a player that goes through massive peaks and troughs in form, and I've not really been overly impressed with Gross. Obviously, the fact that Gross came with such big kind of recommendations from the Premier League, but I've just not seen why he was rated so much over there, to be honest, because he just seems like he doesn't really offer that much. And he defensively, he's meant to be a defensive mid, but his tackling and this kind of stuff is not that good as far as what I've seen. So I think Nemetra is a player who's finally starting to find his feet, and he actually plays well in that position, is that kind of holding position. I've seen him a few times in that position, and it looks quite good with him in that position. So he could be coming into form and starting to turn into a player just in the right time, because let's be honest, it's not been a great 18 months really since he made that big money move from Wolfsburg. But just the last month or so, he's really started to pick up. But obviously that was backed up by the fact that he got the Germany call-up and even scored as well against Hungary, I think it was. So, he's having a good run of form at the minute. Obviously, he got the second goal as well with an opportunist strike, which Atabola should probably have saved in truth. But if you don't shoot, you don't score, basically. That's the old proverb.
Very true, very true.
So yeah, basically, and as for Dortmund, it was a good performance. I thought the pressing was a lot better, which is surprising, as you say, because the formation that they went with wasn't really set up to press, in truth. But it could have been partly to do with Freiburg being quite poor on the day, to be honest, and they kept giving the ball away and around in their own half, basically, and there were very few players that can really hold their head high from their side. But overall, from them, it was a comfortable performance, even defensively, apart from that. The Grifo double chance and the hurler one, which they probably should have scored, Freiburg. Maybe if they'd have got the 1-1 there, it could have been a different game. I mean, they've got to be scoring one of those 3 great chances in one move. But in the end, it was comfortable for the home side. I'm glad to see Maxi Bayer getting the goal, because I think we all know that he's a number 9 ultimately. And this was, I think, his first start as a number 9. Obviously, Gurasi picking up a slight knock, and the 1-0 was a good finish as well, early finish, which is what he needed. Ultimately, he got the deciding goal in this game, which is important. Brandt with a nice free kick as well. He obviously made a start for Germany as well in midweek, so he's starting to play himself into a little bit of form too. I always feel as though the better with Marlon in the team, though. For me, I don't know if you noticed it, Rory, but for me, he should still be starting every game. Really, I really believe that. I don't know why he kind of fell out with Terzic by the look of it about last January, I think, and he's never really been able to get fully back into the team since then. But for me, he's a player that should be playing in this team. Like, I still rate him, and he played a part in the opening goal as well. And then probably their player of the season really so far, Bino Gittins. So they just call him Gittins nowadays in Borussia, I think. But he got another goal, and he just loves that cutting and the strike into the far post. And that must be 7-8 goals in all competitions for him now, and it's been a really impressive season for the young Englishman as well. He kind of reminds me of Sancho in some ways as well. We're starting to see like real kind of similarities there. And I think he came from the City Academy as well. So
I think so.
I mean, he's looking like a good player. He's not fully consistent yet, to be honest, Gittins. But I think overall, good performance from Dortmund. It helps to release a little bit of pressure on Sahin. But obviously, just to get the kind of ball rolling. But obviously, we're in the countdown for Der Klassiker next weekend as well, aren't we? And that's when Sahin is really going to get judged, because he needs his team, maybe not to win the game, but he needs them to be competitive in the game. And I think if they get battered, then we could again be talking about curtains for Sahin. But this was a good performance, a confident performance against an admittedly lackluster Freiburg side. But, it puts them back into the top 5-6 in the league, and they're looking upwards again now.
Yeah, just the word, like you say, releases the pressure valve for now. They've got obviously European prospects to look forward to. Then the Klassiker, like you said, that will be the real litmus test for Sahin. Just want to say Bensebaini's form maybe picking up slightly, involved in 2 goals, one of his better games for Dortmund. So that's the kind of Bensebaini that they wanted to see. And Freiburg were just, like you say, all over, pretty terrible. The big worry for Freiburg now is the fact that Junior Adumu, his form has dropped. He obviously then comes off the bench and gets himself bloody red carded straight away, elbowing Schlotterbeck or Anton. I can't remember who it was. Late on in the match, obviously Osterhager got 2 yellow cards. The second one definitely was a yellow. I can't recall the first one. Major concern is the goals, because if Grifo and Doan aren't scoring for them, Holler doesn't really do it that much anymore. He's a great utility player, but he doesn't bag loads of goals. Gregorisic is a player that we don't see that much at the moment. I don't know if he's injured, I must admit, but his form, he had a great form in the first half of last season, I think it was, when he was bagging for fun. But he, by hook or by crook, he's not getting goals. So, for Freiburg, that's a bit of a concern. Their form has dropped off a little bit, but I think that's to be expected. I suppose the one good thing for Freiburg is that, they can just concentrate this season on, just Bundesliga football, no European adventures or worries. So there's not too much in respect to rotation, and Julian Schuster can just concentrate on week and try and improve that squad. But I feel, maybe there's a bit of support needed for Adumu, Grifo, and Douan in that kind of attacking third of the pitch. Right then, so we'll move on to some of our other games that we're going to cover, and again, probably do these in slightly less detail. We'll talk about the two games that ended 3-0, shall we? The first of which we can talk about was Bayern, of course, who got match week 11 off to an expected start, Mark, and another expected hat-trick, I suppose, for Harry Kane, although he did it very late on in the match, especially his last two goals, obviously 2 penalties. We'll talk about the third goal in a minute, because that's gone viral in a sense, because Harry Kane has effectively recreated the Bundesliga logo when he controlled that, that cross from Goretzka, I think it was. So there's been lots of comparisons between Kane bringing down the ball and the Bundesliga logo, which is quite amusing. But yeah, Kane, the fastest ever player to a half century of goals. In the Bundesliga, comfortably beating a certain Erling Haaland, who got 50 and 50, I believe it was. But yeah, before again, getting the teams up on screen for us there, Mark, thank you for doing that. Before we get in, we don't necessarily need to get into the hooks and crooks of this game, because it was such a dominant performance by Bayern. Looking at it statistically and, watching it yourself, you could just tell it was just, Augsburg playing against a team who are just ultimately a lot better than them. And they tried, and they had one shot on target and one off target. Claude Maurice got a shot on target in the first half, I think it was. They tried and tried. Defensively, they didn't even play badly. But the 2 penalties, Mark, they're 2 pens, aren't they? Especially that first one, clear handball.
Yeah, the first one was really clumsy. I think, was it Meyer who ended up doing it? I think it was really, really clumsy, wasn't it, that one? And it undermined a lot of the hard work done by Augsburg as well. Because by that point, we're already past an hour, don't forget, as well. So I think it was only 63 minutes, as you can see, when the first goal went in. So, they deserve credit for the defensive performance. I think Schlotterbeck is a really good defender, honestly. I think, obviously, he ended up getting the red card. To be honest, the second one, I thought, it was one of them with very, very light touch, the second penalty. And it probably was enough in it. Yeah, there probably was enough in it. But I think Harry Kane he was smart there. I'm not sure he would have got to that ball in truth, but as soon as he felt the touch, he went down. You can understand, a lot of players would do that. But they're going to miss it in the next game against Bochum as well, which is frustrating, because he's very key to them, Schlotterbeck. I think he's had a really good season, and obviously it's against his former club as well. He helped keep up twice too, so that's a pity for him, who's had an impressive season. But for Bayern, it wasn't their best performance, but they were totally dominant in the game, and Olise again was good. I'm surprised to see Goretzka getting quite a few starts at the minute. That's kind of come from nowhere, really, hasn't it?
I just wanted to give him credit, actually. Sorry to jump in, because I think, Company made it quite clear early doors that I didn't really see Goretzka as part of his plans at all. He had Pavlovic ahead of him, Lima ahead of him, and they were just stacked in that area. But, Goretzka said, "No, I'm staying. I'm going to train. I'm just going to work hard, whatever." And he's cracked on, and he's got into the team by hook or by crook, but with injuries, obviously. And he's helped out his team, and he played pretty well, actually. The whole team were pretty comfortable, but just wanted to give him a shout, because I thought, I like the character of Goretzka. He comes across as quite a strong guy in that sense.
And also Coman as well. Don't forget that he's totally dropped out of the team as well. Another player that I've always rated, Kingsley Coman, a true clutch player as far as I'm concerned. Obviously a a fan's favourite after scoring the winner as well in the 2020 Champions League final. So it's good to see him getting a bit more game time. And I think Kompany's really managing the squad well. Like, it looks like a much stronger squad this year, even though it's not really that much bigger in truth, but he's making it look bigger because he's getting more out of the squad. Basically, last season they had a starting 11 and then basically all the rest of the players were trash effectively. But this year he's got the likes of Goretzka, coming into the team, Sane sometimes as well. And it's going well for them, really. I mean, I still feel as though they've got another gear to go up as well, in truth. I feel as though they've not hit their absolute ceiling, but things are looking good for them. 6 points clear at the top. Squad being managed very, very well. Obviously, they've got some big Champions League games because they will want to get into that top 8. And to be honest, the Bundesliga could do with them getting into that top 8 as well, an automatic progression. But things going well for them. For Augsburg, as you say, it was just a step too far. For me, the most frustrating thing for them is that they will be missing Schlotterbeck for that big game next week against Bochum. But for them, they didn't play badly. It probably 3-0 flattered Bayern in truth. But obviously, we have got to mention that amazing goal, the third goal, which was just basically a Harry Kane toying with the player, the opposition, basically. It was frighteningly good. And, that's his third hat-trick of the season for the Englishman and 14 goals for the season. I think me and you, Rory, we even said at the beginning of the year, didn't we, that will this, after a poor Euros, and I still maintain it was a poor Euros from the England.
Yeah, it was.
We did feel as though maybe he'd reached his peak, but not judging on what we've seen so far this season. He's been as good as ever. Yeah. And the guy is just a true goal machine, you know what I mean? Along with the likes of Lewandowski, Erling Haaland, he's just one of those players who just scores goals, doesn't he? It's as simple as that. And it doesn't matter who the opposition is, how he scores them, but he just always scores, basically, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been saying that he's in the best place, like form-wise ever. He feels super comfortable, and it's reflected in the way that he's scoring goals. He's a safe bet for penalties, but that third goal, like you say, is just utter class. The way he brings it down and then finishes it with absolute ease. So as long as Bayern have got him to rely on, they're going to go very, very well and be a hard team to stop for sure. Right then, so we'll go for another 15 minutes or so because we want to obviously talk about the rest of the games. And let's talk about Mainz, who travelled travelled north to Kiel to put in a very controlled but very dominant performance, Mark. We were kind of umming and ahhing about this slightly on the prediction show, but then we both said that this would be a Mainz win. The quality that they showed throughout the game was really, really good. First goal, with Amiri being involved, lovely little 1-2, and for the finish from him. Obviously, they're basically given the second goal with the handball by Gigovic, which Johnny Burkhardt ably finishes. His job done very early in the second half with the goal by Jason Lee. Really good header, which seemed to go in like slow motion, didn't it? It took a while to cross the line. Obviously, he doesn't celebrate with it being his former team of his, but impressive run out from Mainz, but they looked in control the whole way through. I thought a player who obviously didn't score and maybe get the headlines, Paul Nebel, was very good on the day, very lively. Really, really good run out and hit out for Mainz. Very impressive stuff indeed. Kiel, on the other hand, Mark, problems for them. Suitably summed up by the fact, again, as you can see on screen, we've got the team lineups on here that, Shuto, Machino, and Pushak were brought off on 33 minutes by Marcel Rapp. Does that pretty much sum things up the way things were going?
Yeah, I just feel as though they missed Knudsen. They really did in this game. I mean, a player that we've kind of bigged up quite a lot recently as well. I felt as though he and Remberg were making a really good central midfield partnership. they miss him. And I just feel as though I'm going to make a bold prediction here, but I just don't think Holtby's good enough for this level, basically. I think, like, obviously he's the captain, you know, he's been a big part of that team for a number of years now, but this is a step up too far for the well, I was going to say the young man, but he's far from being a young man. Like,
yeah, he's getting on.
Mean, by his Fighter Liga level, I mean, I saw him live a few times and he was good at that level, but this has been a step too far, and I just don't think he's good enough. And obviously he was hooked at half time as well. Yeah. I mean, I think they looked a lot better without him, actually, in the 2 games he missed through injury, and now he comes back and they throw in that sorry show of a first half, basically. And as you say, I mean, I'm surprised that Shuto Makino got back in because he'd been out actually for a few weeks. But again, I guess it's just injuries. I mean, they moved Skripski back more into midfield, but he'd looked good as an attacker in the 2 previous games alongside Harris. Yeah, I mean, Puchai has always been a player that kind of ups and peaks and troughs a little bit, the former Union and Kaiserslautern man. But yeah, this was a dark day for Holstein Kiel, I'm going to be honest, because we build this game as, you know, they played well in the last 2 games, and this was winnable because Mainz really up and down a lot of the time. They played well in this game, but you never quite know where they're going to show up every week. Yeah. And just the first half just wasn't good enough, as you say. I mean, obviously, I think Knudsen will come back in. I think it was just a 1-match ban due to accumulated yellow cards. So I think he'll come back in the next game. So they'll have that nice central partnership between Remberg and Knudsen. But in general, I was watching this and I was just like, oh, that's not good, really, at all. I mean, they barely created anything. I mean, I think they had an XG of less than 0.5, and at home against a team that, you know, it's a strong Mainz team without doubt, but they would have felt they could have beaten them ultimately, or at least got a point or competed even. But yeah, they weren't able to do any of those 3 points. And yeah, Mainz, I just think it was a walk in the park, similar to when they went to St. Pauli a month or 2 ago. It was a very similar game. Like, they didn't have to produce their A game. They played well, Mainz, but it was just very, very easy. It was a case of men against boys, just a better team beating a weaker team, basically. And, you know, Amiri getting a goal, and Burkhardt is just proving himself to be such a great centre forward again now, which is great to see. Yeah. I think it was nice for Lee to get a goal against his former club. And I agree with Paul Nebel as well, is a player who, I think he spent 2 years on loan at Karlsruhe, and he's come back and he looks pretty good. Like, he stood out against Dortmund before the break as well. And he seems to have displaced Sieve as well. So there's a lot of good players coming up from this Fighter Liga and proving themselves as good Bundesliga players too. It's just a pity that a lot of them aren't on Holstein Kiel's team.
Unfortunately not, no. Data forget for Kiel, but as you say, for the next game, only, you know, Kiel versus St. Pauli, the 2 promoted sides going head-to-head. That is also a massive game. Augsburg, Bochum, and Kiel, Pauli next weekend. My oh my, some big games there for us to enjoy. Right, yes, let's again move on very quickly. 2 games that both finished 2-0 over the weekend, and 2 wins, 2 deserved wins as well for Stuttgart over Bochum and for Gladbach over St. Pauli. If I just have my 5 pence on the Stuttgart game, then Mark, you can kind of walk us through Gladbach if you want. Stuttgart, yeah, I mean, huffed and puffed in the first half. Took them a while to, break down Bochum ultimately. Bochum were doing well to, kind of soak up pressure. But in the end, it's, Stuttgart get the first goal through a bit of quality by Chris Führich. Really, really important to see him back at his best and leading the charge, really, because obviously Undav and Leveling available because of injury. And people were moaning a little bit about Demirovic, which is a slight concern in terms of his impact, without Undav, for example. And then a first goal for Justin Deal as well, coming on as a sub, set up by Fabian Rieder, which is great to see. Took his goal really well. Stuttgart probably should have had another 1 or 2 goals at the death, couple of breakaway chances. So solid win for Stuttgart. Bochum just cements where they are as a club. Great, result prior to the international break, but that is another reality bite for the Bochum side that very much struggling so far. But Mark, we were chatting, and you're quite impressed by this Gladbach turn of form, which sees them into 6th place in the league.
Yeah, I am. I really believe that they're building something. I watched the game against St. Pauli, and it was just very comfortable. Like, we're starting to see the days, of 3 or 4 years ago, really now, when they used to win home games quite comfortably, which is good to see.
Yeah.
We saw them comfortably dispose of Bremen, I think, in the last home game, and I think before that they comfortably beat Heidenheim, and now St. Pauli. So, the things are looking good again. I mean, Kleindienst just is the gift that keeps giving, isn't he? Like, with a really nice finish, and he just seems like the perfect centre forward for a team like Gladbach. Really, obviously, that's 7 goals now in just 11 games, and the numbers are really good. And I think he's got maybe a similar number of assists on top of that as well. I mean, he got a hat-trick of assists against Bremen. So, I mean, they found a centre forward again, which is the first time in a few years, really, that they've had a proper centre forward, I would say. Things are looking really good for them. There's just so many good performances in there. I think Player incredibly is back as well. I mean, the opening goal in this game was quite scrappy in truth. I mean, it was a kind of Marvin Friedrich header, which he kind of diverted into the back of the net. It looked as though it could have been offside at first, but it was given.
Yep.
And it is a strong side. Let's not forget that. Robin Hack is as good as ever. Honora, who I feel is always quite underrated actually in Bundesliga standards. Like, his set plays are top drawer, and he doesn't maybe get as many goals as you want from a forward wide player, but he's a very skillful and excellent player.
He's a hard worker as well.
He is, yeah. He deserves a lot of credit. Yeah, I mean, I really like him as a player, and I mean, obviously, he's still keeping Stöger out as well. Let's not forget that. I mean, he basically is the forgotten man of the club at the minute. Really. I think the only issue that Gladbach have really is probably the goalkeeping situation, because neither Moritz Nicolas nor Jonas Omlin have ultimately been able to replace Sommer. They've never really replaced Sommer when he left, I think, nearly 2 years ago now to Bayern in the January transfer window. I think both of them have got mistakes in them, and at the minute, Nicolas is getting the nod, but he's never really quite convinced me in truth. Although a clean sheet here will go down well. But I think overall things are looking good, and Sioane has definitely got more than a bit of breathing room as things stand. And I don't think the sack is anywhere near him as things stand. So you're more or less guaranteed he's going to get into Christmas now, and then, with a few good, say they can stay 6th, 7th going into Christmas, maybe they might back him and get even more maybe midfield quality as well to add to the likes of Wright and Weigl, and things are looking really good for them. And the 5 unbeaten now, let's not forget that. I mean, that's something impressive for a team that have been, struggling to put even 1 or 2 games unbeaten together for a long period. They need those back-to-back wins, but they do have an opportunity. They go to Freiburg this weekend, a relatively off-form Freiburg side. So they'll be looking to get that monkey off the back. And then if they win there, I mean, who knows what can happen, because it's a strong squad. I still maintain he's a good manager too, Sioane, and they've got great fans of the club, and things are on the up in that part of North Rhine-Westphalia.
Yeah, very much so. And just, our last minute or so for this evening, just kind of especially highlight Frankfurt, Mark, because they played in the top spiel, and we haven't really talked about the top spiel at all this evening. But 2 teams that have been on a good run. Frankfurt did the business by hook or by crook. Still played very well, I thought. Goetze getting the important goal, but Ekitike and Marmouche were at it all night. And thought they played well. Werder almost pulled themselves back into it and almost grabbed a point. I think they hit the post near the end, didn't they? Through a header, through Stark, I think it was. But Bremen didn't play a bad game by any stretch, but important for Frankfurt and the league, really, that they held on and stay just the 6 points behind Bayern. Sounds like a lot, but it's still early doors. We're only in match week 11, but very important win. For the Eagles. Unlucky for Bremen. And Baku was the hero for Wolfsburg as they got themselves over the line as well in a probably the worst game of the weekend. I think it's probably fair to say, as they got past a Union side who are also having a bit of a dip, but almost also kind of maybe might have nabbed an equaliser as well for themselves, but an important win for Wolfsburg. So that pretty much brings us to a close. It's been great to talk through match week 11. Some awesome games. Really, really great to kind of reflect and review on. So all there really is left to kind of close up the show. Obviously, before I hand over to you, Mark, just want to quickly, very shamefully, highlight that I have moved on to Blue Sky personally. So you can find me if you search at Bundesliga Rory. So have Bully News as well. They've moved on to Blue Sky. So if you want to follow us both, that would be absolutely fantastic. You can find us there. All the usual Bundesliga chit chat, but on Blue Sky as well. But yeah, I'll hand over to you, Mark, as well, to go through the rest and close up tonight's show.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed what you saw, don't forget to check out our Instagram as well. Give us a follow on there. We share all of our match day experiences and any upcoming shows on there. Don't forget, we're still on X as well, at Over the Bar FB. And is that your changed name, Rory, as well? You've now changed.
Yes, I've had a rebrand.
There you go. Rory's had a rebrand. So you've got to follow him as well on X too and on Blue Sky. And then also don't forget, as you say, on our YouTube as well, to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for any new news. So we'll see you again on Thursday ahead of Matchday 12 predictions. And have a good time, guys. Servus. Bye-bye.